Hello, I'm Kerrigan Cordy. Recently, last week, I my legal name change came through, which in my area I had to, after the decision was made, I had to post it in public at the courthouse for 14 days before they would put their stamp on it. And I could go to the DMV and then the Social Security Administration to get my name and gender changed. Um, I really don't agree, honey. I really don't agree with that process at all because that invites nothing but predators. Any background check will show my past. But requiring this, I don't see any upside whatsoever. What about the battered woman hiding from her husband that's looking to kill her because she had the nerve to leave an abusive relationship? Or what about the person that really wants to destroy every trans person out there? Or maybe a family member that came and said, there was heavy sexual abuse that happened here. I can't have anything to do with that name, and changes it. But the whole family calls them liars and doesn't want them to foul the family name. Don't disgrace the family name. The name is just a thing. It means a lot more. And so I don't see any upside to this. Leave a comment if you see an upside and you disagree with that point of view. Sure, let's have a conversation. Another thing that I started doing last night is I was building things in my trailer, and it's really different. I'm heavily renovating it. And so I'm just letting the YouTube autoplay go on and on and on. And it ends up at this group of videos. I watched several of them because I stopped what I was doing and I watched. And it was about how celebrity deaths are a cover-up by the Illuminati. And it is a way to bring about the great Satan because these people are still alive. They're just living as women or men, and it gives, all these things. Like the example of Prince was just ridiculous. And so I just couldn't help it. I looked through some of the comments. It was like, well, this is eye-opening. And so I left just something that was, a tongue-in-cheek calling them out on their bullshit. Because in this next video that I watched, I left a comment on this one, but I quoted scripture using that they were wrong because it was obviously some heavy Christian calling any trans or gay person, lesbian, bisexual, gender fluid. They were calling all of us Satan worshipers, and that we have this grand agenda and we belong to the Illuminati, to we're going to destroy identity until there is only just one identity, and that is Satan's. And it was just the most offensive shit I had seen. And I looked through the comments, not all of them, but they were just this. It's like what Bill Burr would say. He would say, I'm guilty of this too, but all of these people just going to imright.com on the internet, they're never challenging their points of view, and they're just getting in these self-back-patting circles. It's like, we're right. And just on my way home from the next town over shopping, getting some necessities, I was behind this jackass in a truck that says, I'll keep my guns and my freedom, you can keep your change. And change was in, quotations. And I was like, you fucking inbred retard. Yeah, I'm jumping to conclusions and being vulgar on purpose. It's like, you stupid inbred retard piece of shit. The one thing you can't stop in this life is change, and only the stupidest of the stupid try to conserve what they have all the while knowing that shit changes. You know, the Leave It to Beaver 1950s was not this ideal white picket fence time. It was a horrible, horrible point in America's past. And just to give anybody an example of horror shit that comes out there, look at Edward motherfucking Gaines. Look up Emmett Till, the black boy that was murdered in the South because he was on vacation from the North visiting some family, and he had the gall to whistle at a white woman, and he was brutally murdered. Which is why Rosa Parks ended up sitting on the bus, which is why everybody got so mad. That's when counter sit-ins started happening. This shit was getting ramped up anyway, but it didn't reach the level that it did until this horrid brutality happened. Are we gonna let this horrible brutality now get focused on us? And a lot of this hatred was to transgender, and tranny was being thrown around a lot. And one of my comments is, tranny is extremely offensive. It's like using the N-word to an African American. Or if you want to get politically correct and take this to just fuck you levels, which is what politically correctness is. It's a way of the powerful people saying, fuck you, you're wrong, and everything's your fault. It's not our fault because we created the system and we created the way that it came, but if we keep you thinking it's your fault, then you'll just go to our schools and memorize what we tell you to rather than teaching you how to think. So I'm making a lot of broad points here. But the anger and fear of trans people, because we have been through something that the rest of humanity has thought was concrete, not realizing it was this pigeonhole. Being transgender is like being a square peg in a round hole. Your mind is literally forced into consciousness because of this irritation. There is a conflict. There is extra pressure. There is something wrong. It is very hard to express this, especially from young children, when there is no construct in the English language to go anything other than a binary view of most things, gender not being the least of this. So defining anything outside of a language that is not created to even deal with this, because it was nurtured over centuries by people in fear of losing what they had and would take anything from anybody else. I am worried about where the world is going, and I'm going to say the world because it is the world. And I see no point in people worshiping a border. If you look at history, the deeper line you draw in the sand will produce horrible results. And it really is antithesis to what they are trying to do. It brings about the opposite result. Example, auto insurance. This took away a personal responsibility from the drivers to meet a solution when something bad happens. And it took away personal responsibility, so suddenly you didn't have to be as aware as you could have been, which is why so many things have been focused on making driving easier and safer. And what they're doing is that they're making people less responsible for their actions, which is a horrible thing to do psychologically and societally. Making things simpler makes it worse. And so if you build upon that very basis of thinking, everything you build upon that foundation is wrong. And so trans people are very, very smart. It is one of the survival mechanisms we have to It is one of the survival mechanisms that we have to develop in order to survive. We have to be intelligent in order to learn what society says is okay. We have to live within a boundary, and we have to live in fear of what society says, how they judge, and even how we can keep friends, keep a job, stay in a loving relationship. Because we're constantly relying on this. So when we transition, not only is there this huge thing in the body, but what's not recognized is this huge progression that happens in the mind psychologically. You're learning within a very short period of time how to rely upon your own opinions and to realize that you're not using this processing power to cope with life. Suddenly a great amount of that processing can be used with what you have learned over life, and you can sit there and objectively go through things and figure out who you really are and how you can express the ego. That in my case was, I had a serious anti-ego. I thought that there has to be somebody at the bottom, and nobody wants to be at the bottom, so somebody has to do it. And my point of view on my life was, well, if nobody's volunteering for this shit, I will. And throughout my really young school ages, I would demonstrate the most giving nature and selfless nature. And I enjoy and really take a lot of pride in the fact that I can do that. And it means something to me. And I'm not doing it because I'm scared of what a deity or a judge or somebody in any power, whether that be a boss, politically, religiously, whatever you want to put on that. I could go on each subject and get lost in my point. There is no point in holding on to something forever. Love, a mother's love for her child, a father's love for his child, a stranger's love for somebody that goes through something really horrible, and they will go out of their way and give more to that person than they would to a friend, just because of the moment. And it is not a fear of the future. Will I need this money or this time or this effort for something else? Will I need this? Will I? That gets thrown out in times like that. And you have to learn when to be selfless, and you need to learn when to be selfish. And so transition is a very selfish time. And from people on the outside, trans people during transition, we lose a lot of friends and jobs because of fear and yada yada. But there is also this degree of effort that people are not prepared for. And some of my closest friends that we aren't as close anymore, is there has always been this separation of what I think and what I express. And now I'm learning how to express what I'm thinking. And so what people find out with me is there is a different intelligence and perspective with me that goes beyond what they think, is because they'll get lost in a point, and intellectually I can keep up with their point and why they're thinking it. But then if it's relevant and I think that they're willing for an open discussion, I'll take them back to the beginning, and it's like, you know, in what you're saying in theory, I technically agree with, but from this standpoint of a foundation, it's wrong. And in order to express that foundation to somebody, you have to use a lot of abstract comparisons. And so this demonstrates a very high intelligence with a healthy lack of ego. Because somebody such as Richard Dawkins that gets probably sexually excited when he... Come on, honey. Come on inside. Yeah. When they use language that is specifically designed to be exclusive, and that attitude, rather than say to people, you can get where I am and have this perspective which is so grand, it rather says to these people, it has the opposite effect of, you are giving me bullshit and you're making this so complicated that it's bullshit. And this way is how I think. These are usually the terms I'm thinking in, and so I have to pause in conversations and reword it to the way that somebody speaks, which does not speak of their intelligence. You know, some people that I have seriously misjudged in the black community that is in such like the music business, which is mainly known in black for black people as like hip-hop and that kind of thing and that kind of lifestyle, which I got caught up in the white person thinking of that, you know, they are this, they are that. And I got to know some people, and this guy, right in the middle of a job, I was his supervisor. I won't give his name, but I hope he sees this. But he called me out on my bullshit, and I didn't honestly know what I was saying was racist or bullshit. I had no idea. And in fact, I thought I went out of my way to express that I wasn't racist, which was a form of racism I didn't understand until I was transgender. And I suddenly noticed that it's really obvious when people go out of their way to say they're accepting, to say they know people, and it's okay. And although the sentiment is nice, that's hard to deal with when you deal with it over and over. And with that perspective, it's really easy to gain that it is okay to be racist or sexist or however you want to express how far these things can go. And so when I was confronted with my own racism, and I apologized to him, and I was horribly embarrassed, and still to this day when I think about that, my face turns red and I feel like shit. It was a horrible moment for me. And I thank him for calling me on my bullshit. You know how hard it was to look at myself and say, my God, you've been racist. You're a racist. And then to come out that somebody like Lil Wayne is really, really fucking smart. Except the way he expresses himself, it's really easy to misjudge somebody for that. You are stupid, you are this. And so a label is a bad thing. But if you go real deep into language, language was developed because things needed labels. Otherwise, you are not going to progress as a society, which is meant that it is a grouping of more than one person that grows. So this basis has gotten confused, and especially in the science world, which science is put across as cold and logical, but science is made by men. Oh God, I only have like 40 seconds. I'm gonna end this video really quick. I'm gonna be changing this YouTube channel. I'm getting together a film crew, and we are going to be doing more issue-oriented kind of stuff, but we're also going to be producing like kind of scary little 15-minute videos. I'm writing one right now, but thank you really for watching this. This is more of an expression of how I think, and it will continue.